WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Streaming live on WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's J.B. Biunno.
Brian Laundrie died of a gunshot wound to the head. This according to the family attorney, who says that the Laundries have been informed of the news and that their son, Brian, his manner of death has been ruled a suicide. As online questions remain as to what this means for justice for Gabby, we're breaking down the latest live on WFLA Now. Hey there, everybody. J.B. Biunno and Josh Benson here with you live again on WFLA Now. Josh, you and I think, received the same text message from attorney Steven Bertolino about 20 minutes ago. Would you like to read the full text message that we just got from Bertolino?
Yes, I can do that. He said, Chris and Roberta Laundrie have been informed that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head and the manner of death was suicide. Chris and Roberta are still mourning the loss of their son and are hopeful that these findings bring closure to both families. Now, what I found interesting is this kind of came out earlier today, so we've been trying to get a hold of Steven Bertolino to get an update because you had mentioned you had reached out to a medical examiner, right?
Yes, I had reached out to the medical examiner's office.
And they said that they weren't going to be providing the update. So then we assumed maybe the FBI would. So I'm still texting here with the attorney, and I asked if there's anything from the notebook or any confirmation on the suicide, and he said nothing further. So then I said, what about the report? Can we get access to the report? He said, I don't have the report. So I asked, will the FBI update us? The medical examiner says it's not coming from them. He said, I was told info will be released at 1 p.m., so I'm not sure if that happened. It's now 1:40, so we don't officially have the report.
But here's the thing. The 1 o'clock news is interesting because
he just sent that just a second ago.
I've been told that it's going to be released by FBI Denver. That even though FBI Tampa is still still very much involved in the investigation, partnering with FBI Denver, it's still FBI Denver. FBI Denver Mountain Time, so that would be 1 o'clock. That would be 1 o'clock.
Oh, good point.
So
time difference.
That could be 3 o'clock.
Our time,
Eastern time. So that's an interesting wrinkle. I did not know that from you as far as notes go before this stream. So for those of you just joining us here, this is Steven Bertolino, the Laundrie family attorney, confirming to reporters and really copying, pasting the same text message to all of us, telling us that the Laundries, Chris and Roberta in Northport, they have been informed of the manner of death being a suicide and that it was via a gunshot to the head. But tons of questions. I know that sounds like a broken record, but still tons of questions. And the big one that comes out of this, Josh, we already see it online, already see it in our Facebook comment section, Twitter, hello to YouTube as well. You can use hashtag HJB, hashtag HJosh, but the big question we're already seeing is, if he died by a gunshot wound to the head, where's the gun?
Right. Everybody's asking that right now.
Where's the gun? Now, happening at the Carlton Reserve, if it was a pistol, if it was a smaller firearm and it was a gunshot wound to the head, of course, you would imagine that firearm doesn't travel very far.
Right. You and I were talking about that, and if in the area where the remains were found, obviously remains can get taken from animals, they can carry off by the water. We had talked about how deep the water could have been when this situation unfolded earlier. A gun is going to sit kind of where it sits, and I think especially how heavy it is. It could be down in the mud, it could be under all that water, and now under the surface of the leaves and the ground there. So I don't know if they had metal detectors out there at the time during that search with the FBI and with Northport, but you got to believe they're going to be looking for a gun at this point. Because we haven't been told that they had found one. I think we would have been given the heads up that something. We were told that the dry bag and the notebook were found.
It would be very bizarre for the FBI and Special Agent in Charge McPherson announcing at that press conference. Everyone remembers that press conference that day at the Carlton Reserve when they came out and they said that they had found, the book bag, and that they had found a notebook. It would be very strange for them to say that they had found those two items and didn't find a firearm there at the Carlton Reserve.
But would it be? I mean, maybe they don't want people to jump to too many conclusions and thinking maybe there's more to the case or other victims, or any victims for that matter. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's where an update would then be very useful from the FBI to say, this is the cause of death, this is the manner of death, this is the evidence we have, and this is what we know about the case so far. That would just put a lot of rest to a lot of the questions that people have out there on Twitter and on social media right now, because just a lot of speculation on where this could go from here.
So we have been told, and I was working the phones all morning trying to get more information as to where exactly we were going to get the update from as far as Brian Laundrie's manner of death. This, of course, coming from Steven Bertolino. And let's kind of preface this by saying that this is very extraordinarily common, and I talked about this a little bit on Twitter, Josh, in that the family is going to get advanced notification. Mm-hmm. It's FBI. It's just the manner in which it's their MO as far as how they operate, that they're going to call the family and let them know in advance. They don't want them to find out from the media or from the public at large.
Sure.
So you make that phone call. Mm-hmm. So then it's Steven Bertolino's option at that point, him, of course, representing his clients, and I'm sure that they had a conversation. He's going to release it to the media if he so chooses to. That's his prerogative, and he chose to do so. We don't know exactly when that call was, but here, I'll share a little bit of my text exchange with Bertolino. At 11:36 Eastern Time, actually 11:38, we can say 11:38 Eastern Time, he said his clients hadn't received that courtesy call from law enforcement. So that might have come between when the initial text came in, so between really in that 2-hour window. So really this afternoon was when, as we understand it, the Laundries found out that that their son, their 23-year-old son, Brian Laundrie, died by suicide of a gunshot wound to the head. And now it's just waiting on the FBI. Now, what is the FBI document? I've been hearing that they are preparing a release of some kind. What is that document going to tell us that the Steven Bertolino text doesn't? Are they going to announce any more specific details about whether about the examination process? A forensic anthropologist was given the remains for a period of time, so on and so forth. Are they going to release more about the methodology behind how the conclusion was reached that it was suicide? Because I know that there's a lot of people here, and hello YouTube and Facebook, hello everybody. We'll get to your comments here momentarily. A lot of people that just want more details and want more specifics. But are we going to find out more in the FBI's document that we don't have right now from Steven Bertolino's text message? Is a big question as well.
Can you look at this real quick?
I can.
And fix that? Because a lot of people are asking about that. That's your Facebook? Okay.
Yep, let's fix.
It was a typo, so we just want to make sure that's clarified. So as we know at this hour from the attorney, now this is all we're getting from the attorney. The attorney is the one who is sending out the information that the parents have been informed that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head and the manner of death was suicide. So yeah, as JB brought up, the question is, where's the gun? That's a big question because obviously it could possibly be in the reserve and very close where those remains were found. But I know a lot of people went out to the reserve after the FBI had opened it. The public was there. I know a lot of people had been searching on their own. They'd been doing their own, digging around there. They've been sending pictures, posting stuff to social media. So if that's the case, I think a water bottle was found outside of the investigation and more remains were found. We weren't certain if those were human or not. I don't believe they were, but that was some of the stuff that the public found on their own after the investigation was wrapped up at the Carlton Reserve. So we have been waiting for this update for a while. I know we've been checking in with the attorney, Steven Bertolino, for weeks, just checking in randomly to see if anything was going to pop up. And to be honest, I didn't think any update was going to be made before the holidays. It seems to be when you have updates of this nature leading up to the holidays, especially with government agencies, that information usually doesn't hit during a holiday necessarily. But in this case, it came out when, and I think, JB, you're right. I think the family was notified. I'm sure they were notified. They had that discussion on if they wanted to put that out there. And I'm hoping we hear now from the FBI to give an official news conference or statement, or at least maybe the report as to what they found. So that's what we're waiting on now. And you could be right. The attorney said 1 o'clock. That could be perceived as maybe 1 o'clock Mountain Time. We don't know that for sure, but we're going to try to find out.
Yeah, that's interesting to note that it could be coming in the next hour and a half. Let me put out there, and Josh, thank you for the heads up. So I initially put out a social media post that then got pushed out to several different places, and I was typing at the time that it was that the manner of death has been ruled a suicide in relation to, of course, the ongoing investigation into Gabby Petito's homicide. Words got mixed up. Apologies to all of my social media followers on my WFLA JB Facebook and Twitter pages. That is completely 100% on me. So sorry for the erroneous tweet and the erroneous Facebook post. Brian Laundrie's death has been ruled a suicide. It was never ruled a homicide. It was just a mix-up of words and just typing way too fast. So apologies for that. Okay, so back here with you live, everybody, on WFLA Now. What we're going to do is we're going to feature some of your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJosh comments. And Josh, this is something that I know a lot of people are chiming in online about. We've been talking about this, the unanswered questions. That was our last WFLA Now stream about Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. And this was one of the ones on that list. What exactly happened to Brian Laundrie? But let's talk about timeline for a second. I'm going to queue up some of the comments, but we were talking the last time you and I were on stream. We were talking about how the decomposition of the remains and them being skeletal puts the timeline only in. It's not as if that he passed away and that the suicide was done in October. This is likely something that was done, and we have, of
soon
course,
after he returned.
Soon after making his way into the Carlton Reserve.
Yeah.
And that's another answer that we're sort of getting just some more light shed on here with this information from Bertolino.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we went through those motions of trying to figure out, remains and how long it takes for decomp and things of that nature. And, we covered that in depth over the past month and a half. And basically, I think it comes down to the fact that he came back from his trip, met with his family out at the campground, went home. Words were exchanged with the family. He went out to the reserve, and I would imagine, in my opinion, that happened soon thereafter. So that would give time for the remains to settle. If the water came up, obviously we looked at the water levels, so that would have played a factor. The humid climate here in Florida would have played a major factor in how those remains were skeletonized, as we were told. And only partial remains. A lot of you are asking right now what remains were found, and we don't have the answers. I don't have the specifics on what remains were found, but obviously there was enough evidence. Couldn't be determined initially from the medical examiner. That's why I went to the anthropologist to really take a closer look at DNA and the skeleton to determine a cause of death and a manner of death. So that's what we know at this point. So still a lot of answers. It's a frustrating one because we've all been waiting for some type of closure on the case, for instance, but obviously there's not going to be closure for Gabby's family at this point. We want to try to get more answers, constantly get as much information as we know. Now, where is the gun? Obviously, if it's a gunshot wound to the head, where does that gun exist? Is there one? Is it still in the reserve? Those are all questions now we're going to want to find out. So my hope is the FBI in Denver will give a press conference. And according to the attorney, he had mentioned he was going to get his information at 1 o'clock. So we don't know if that was 1 o'clock Eastern, which is past us now, or if it's 1 o'clock Mountain, which would put us at, 3 o'clock Eastern. So we'll keep our eyes open for that. And if you guys have anything else, we'll start taking some questions here too.
Yeah, we're going to start to feature some out of the Facebook Live comment section. But what's interesting? Gabby Petito's death ruled a homicide. Brian Laundrie's death ruled a suicide. We have that in different states and completely different jurisdictions. So it was handled a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And this was a surprise. Now, remember when they announced a press conference, the Teton County coroner announced a press conference to announce the details into the autopsy that was performed on Gabby Petito's remains. It was not done the same way in Florida. It would have that's why we were wondering if there was going to be a Sarasota County or District 12 medical examiner's press conference of some kind. But everything that we had heard as far as the process and the procedure here in our area, in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, was that it was going to be handled by the FBI, that there wasn't going to be a similar press conference as what we saw in Teton County, Wyoming, as what we would see in Sarasota County, Florida, that it was going to be handled by the FBI. Here's what we have now today is that, again, our phone calls over to the medical examiner's office there in Sarasota County, they've just been saying everything's going to be handled by the FBI. And so we're anticipating that FBI information coming out at some point. We've been told, again, from Bertolino that it's likely going to be today, tomorrow. So we'll get more information about that. Let's take some more #HeyJB, #HeyJosh questions. Andrea McDaniel, again, if you want to have your comment featured, use #HeyJB or #HeyJosh with your comment, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook Live, or YouTube Live. And if you don't want your comment and your name to be featured on screen as Andrea's is here, just don't use the hashtag and we'll let your comment continue to scroll on by. Andrea here, do you think his parents will ever speak out now behind Steve, the attorney? And we get this question a lot. Will we ever hear from the Laundries? And I remember in covering this story, Steven Bertolino has maintained that he is non-committal to his clients ever telling their side of the story. We have, of course, had conversations, Josh, on WFLA Now as to whether or not the Laundries would, at any point in the future, want to come forward and say, this is what happened from our perspective. But would they ever do that? Bertolino's remain non-committal.
Yeah, and I think we have to look at it this way. In the topic of closure, absolutely this is not closure for Gabby Petito's family. There's no closure there. There's so many questions that need to be answered.
And justice, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the closure for the family. Get justice, maybe that can provide them some closure, and that we're far from that, sadly. Is this closure for the Laundrie family? Now that they found out how their son died, they have remains. Is it enough for them to have closure? For a lot of people would say, does it matter at this point? Well, I mean, they're human. They have a son, and he's dead. So you have to offer them up that respect to mourn and to deal with that scenario. But the question I think remains now is, you can't really close this case off. You have to find out what the remaining elements are. Now, if the notebook provided answers related to the case, maybe related to Gabby's case, this is hypothetical, but if it provided any answers or clues into what happened to her and how she died specifically, now that I would imagine would open a lot of doors for comment from the family. I mean, people would be demanding to know more about what they knew. And so I think the pressure would be really put on that family to speak, because they would want to know, all right, how much did you know? Was there anything specific about how Brian died and about how Gabby died? Anything that you would know, and they would demand to try to get some answers from that family. So I think it's early. It's pretty early to tell right now what the next step is, but this is at least one piece of the timeline as we move forward in this whole case.
Brian Enton was on News Nation last night, and they were talking about Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie and where things go from here with former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendorfer. And it was interesting because one of the things that Jennifer said was everything's under the microscope with this investigation. Mm-hmm. So if the FBI found something irregular, such as a discarded item, or she said a deleted text message, deleted correspondence, anything that just that is irregular, then of course the investigation goes in that direction. But as of right now, these are grieving parents. So many people, again, we've talked about this so many times on WFLA Now, so many people have wanted to vilify Chris and Roberta Laundrie when really, in reality, they are and have been over the last several weeks, they are grieving parents to 23-year-old Brian Laundrie. As of, remember, just a few months ago, as of this summer, Chris and Roberta Laundrie thought that, that their 23-year-old son and their 22-year-old daughter-in-law to be were going to get married and have a happy life together, and their whole lives have been turned upside down. And again, they are not facing any charges. Right. We have to, again, stay rooted in reality. They're not facing any charges right now. They haven't even been the only thing that doesn't really add up as from a law enforcement standpoint, and I could talk about the Petitos and the Schmitz, but from a law enforcement standpoint, is when the Northport Police Department Josh Taylor, spokesperson for Northport Police, says that early on in their investigation that there wasn't full cooperation from the Laundrie family. That's how he put it, that they did not cooperate fully. This was around the time when the mix-up with Northport Police admitting that they thought that they saw Brian leave the home when in reality it was Roberta Laundrie. And then Josh Taylor came out and said, that there wasn't full cooperation early on in the investigation from the Laundries themselves, from Chris and Roberta. So let's just keep everything. Let's stay again to the facts, folks, and it's really important.
Point I want to bring up too on the fact is if they will talk or not. Jaden just sent me a good message, and this makes sense. That Steven Bertolino has done several interviews, we know, and he did mention that. Maybe later they will speak. Now is not the time. And I actually remember him saying that several times. Will the parents speak? Maybe later. Now is not the time. So he kept the door open there. And so given the new development, obviously they're grieving, and we respect that, and that will take some time now that they have confirmation of how their son died. But after this is over, the holidays are over, maybe we will hear from the parents on just everything that transpired in the last 3-4 months.
Lisa Tomlinson, #HJB. Any DNA found? DNA, as far as it being a resource in this case, you have to imagine that at this stage in the investigation, that DNA has been absolutely utilized as far as a means of trying to obtain evidence and something that can be used used procedurally, whether or not this case were to ever get to a court of law. But you would imagine that DNA is, of course, very much a part of the investigation, not just into into both investigations, into both deaths. But we haven't heard anything about DNA other than a couple of weeks ago when Josh Taylor told us that at that time that DNA hadn't been part of the forensics examination at that stage and where they were at the time with Brian Laundrie's remains. Well, and
a lot of people are asking, they want official DNA results to confirm that these remains are Brian Laundrie. So now we're going to expect to see a report on the death here, hopefully soon, where we can actually get some answers on how they came to this conclusion, what specifically they analyzed, and how, somebody like an anthropologist or a medical examiner can make this determination. So that should hopefully clear up things related to DNA or not. But yeah, for sure they would have a DNA sample profile on record.
Interesting question here. So Tracy Hennessy Coledge, #AJB, how can they determine it was a gunshot with only a partial skull found? And this is where having a forensic anthropologist would be, but perhaps it's only a partial skull because it was a gunshot wound to the head.
And they can look at the cracks, essentially, on the remains that were found to determine what's natural and what's not natural. I mean, they're that specific in how they review these things, essentially under a microscope, to determine, differences in how, that bone would separate.
Let's not forget, too, that the FBI has immeasurable resources to be able to tap into the expertise of some of the best in their fields, right, including anthropology. So
my question would be, would they be able to tell the type of firearm just based off of what they have?
Right.
Ballistics tests. That would be interesting because you have so little to work with, but they are very good, and they have great resources, like you said, JB, and I think if they could determine the ballistics, the type of firearm used, that would be very interesting. If they don't have the gun already. We don't know that they don't.
Right on that point. Let's do 3 for 1 here. Lauren Dolce, #AJB, did the FBI say they found a gun with the body? I recall the backpack, notebook, but not a gun. Is the comment from Lauren. Samantha Ward, #AJB, self-inflicted gunshot wound. Where's the gun? Right. And then lastly, David Wright, #AJB, did they find the gun? Not only did they find the gun, but speaking of ballistics, any signs whatsoever too of a bullet that was used in the self-inflicted gunshot wound. So
and what might be also interesting too is they may have found the gun, and obviously they keep everything close to the vest, and I'm surprised they even released what they found. Maybe they held that gun back just in the event that they wanted to look at anything else that gun could have been related to, what the history of that gun was. They wanted to make sure that all of that was buttoned up and they knew every detail before they came to this conclusion and even released this fact. I know it took time to determine the cause and manner of death, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did find it and then just held that back.
Let's also ask this question that's important. Where did he get a gun? It might not be, again.
That's what I mean. They probably track, if they were to have it, they could track that as far back as they'd probably need to be, based on serials or based on just history, maybe talking to the family, just determining maybe it was a pawn shop. I mean, they would start working on that.
Right.
And we would have no idea what part of that investigation was happening.
And I don't remember at any stage having any conversations that pointed to, right, did Brian, was Brian a firearm owner? Who was it something from his family's home there in Northport?
They may have just had it in the family. You never know.
We don't know. Again, a answer that pops up more questions as we would usually see. Josh Benson, JB Biunno here with you live, everybody on WFLA Now. Again, we don't know if 3 o'clock Eastern is going to be the time when we're going to get the FBI update. We have heard, of course, that an FBI update is
coming
in the works. I think is a fair way to put it, based on some of the things that we've heard and doing the jobs that we do. But whether or not it comes, it could come today. It could come tomorrow. We're anticipating getting some information here shortly. But everything that we're hearing, so we're local here in the Tampa Bay area. Everything that we are hearing is that it's going to be released by the FBI. And let's not forget that the lead agency in charge is FBI Denver. So we'll see exactly who releases that information, when they release it, and really what that information is in the long run. Anything you're seeing, Josh, on social before I bring up some more questions and comments?
I want to clarify. We don't know for sure that the FBI report is coming. Based on chats with the attorney, he indicated that, let me just read this again so there's no confusion, so you guys all expect the FBI to come out. Because again, we don't know what the FBI is thinking, nor do we get any lead times on this. I said, will the FBI update us? The medical examiner says it's not coming from them. Thanks for the help. He said, I was told the info to be released at 1 p.m. Not sure if that happened. And I said, from FBI, perhaps 3 p.m. Mountain from FBI? He says, don't know. So then I asked him, who gave you the info? The FBI? So he hasn't responded to that, so we'll see.
And again, talking to
Steven Bertolino, the family attorney for the Laundries.
Okay. Reading through some of the comments that have just come in. And Jennifer Lynn, again, back to the timeline. #AJB, have they said how long Brian was deceased for? And again, as far as piecing together the timeline, this is a
people want answers.
People want answers.
And that report, if there is a report, hopefully there will be, that will help give us some of those answers. We just don't have it yet.
And let's also, and Josh, I was juggling a lot on this stream, so apologies if you brought this up before.
Well, it was funny because you and I were sitting here talking, looking at some of the new features we have here, and I left my phones at the desk. I've been on it all day. The minute I walk away, we get the update. And we're scampering to try to get,
and then typing too fast, and then again that leads to my homicide, suicide mix-up on my tweet and Facebook post, which again, full disclosure, super sorry for, apologies there for any mix-up. That was just an honest mistake of typing way too quickly. But so Special Agent in Charge McPherson comes out, makes the announcement that they have found remains at the Carlton Reserve, and that they have a book bag, and they also have the notebook, but not a firearm. Now, what's interesting is that now we know that the cause of death is, the manner of death has been revealed to be a suicide, according to Bertolino, the Laundrie family attorney. Is the notebook the suicide note? This is now
but everybody's asking the question. I mean, you're fair to ask that question because, that affects this case in a major way.
It does, because
it could have the whole case pivoting on it, for all we know. I mean, if there is a suicide note, doesn't mean he's guilty of what happened necessarily, but if he was, maybe that could be written in there. We don't know, but everybody's asking that question. What's in the notebook? And the notebook seemed to be somewhat protected by the bag. So as far as we know, so even if it was underwater, you'd think there would be enough. It would be legible enough to see what was written, if anything. Or maybe it was drawings. We knew he liked to draw, too.
And Coffindoffer last night on News Nation talking about how there's chemical and indentation techniques that would blow your mind as far as what the FBI has to resurrect the words off the page, if there are words off the page. We've talked about it on WFLA now that the notebook could just be doodles, could be drawings.
And that's a good point. I did a story literally 20 years ago, and think of the technology now, but 20 years ago with the DCI back in the Midwest. And they actually showed how you could take a check written out, and some people were forging checks. They lifted the ink, they showed the indentation from the pen, and how they actually lifted the ink off, rewrote it, and that's how they busted this guy, because they saw the indentation from the previous pen under a microscope. Fascinating stuff. So that's 20 years ago. So the technology now has got to be leaps and bounds better.
You would imagine so. And so, and we talked about it on stream recently with Masa Saidi and Walt Buteau, our 8 on Your Side team, whether or not, if it didn't contain any pertinent information to the investigations into Brian Laundrie's death and to Gabby Petito's death, would they just release it back to the family as sort of a memento? Or is it something that they would keep as evidence in their investigation, depending on where the investigation would be?
As long as the case is open, you know.
Exactly. So the notebook now becomes, it resurfaces. And let's get to some more comments here in just a moment. You can use hashtag HJB, hashtag HJosh. But as far as, again, where's the gun? If Brian Laundrie...
And wasn't there a phone we're looking for too? Gabby's phone,
right?
I think a lot of people have been asking about that. So there's pieces to this puzzle that haven't been discovered yet, or how they fit in.
Or at least publicly revealed from the FBI. The FBI could have 98% of this case wrapped up, and they're just procedurally now going through the paces before they announce anything. That's entirely possible, maybe not be all that likely in the estimations of FBI agents or former FBI agents or FBI experts, but where things stand right now, we don't know as far as an investigation goes if they have a third of this wrapped up, half of it wrapped up, or a majority of it wrapped up. We don't know, because we don't know the amount of evidence that they have and the amount of answers that they have. But they have, of course, conducted all the here's another thing. Here's another thing I want to bring up. So the FBI comes out and they announce that they find the book bag. They find the backpack, and they find the book bag, and they find the notebook, at the Carlton Reserve. And then they continue to search that area. And we had Eagle 8 HD fly over that area where they were searching. They put up the TFR. Remember, Eagle 8 HD had to go above the TFR and had to really zoom in there. You're looking at the Carlton Reserve. One of the things that they announced, the book bag has been found. They announced that the notebook was found. That's the last time we've heard from the FBI. Is it possible that later on that day, or even the following morning, that they continued their examination of the area and then they said, "Oh, there it is, found the gun"? It would be shocking to me, mind-blowingly shocking, if somehow, Josh, the gun was still at the Carlton Reserve.
Well, yeah, and I think a good point was just made that, keep in mind, human remains can move pretty easily. They could go with the water, they could go from animals, so this could have happened, somewhere where we don't necessarily believe it happened after finding the remains. It could have been 50 feet away, it could have been 100 feet away. I guess we don't know. So that's the thing. If they were searching in the area and they really searched where the remains were found, doesn't necessarily mean that gun is 50 feet in another direction. So I look at a gun as a very sensitive piece of evidence, so I could see them finding it and not releasing that information to the public, just given the severity of what they found. And the questions that still remain: was that gun used any other way? Was it used for anything? Where is that? They would have to go through and really analyze the background of that gun to make sure they know what they're dealing with. Because otherwise, they would be, if they made that public, they would open up the fact that, hey, here's a gun that was found. And then suddenly, if it was tied to any other case, you're putting information that's very sensitive out there. So the FBI doesn't give out everything. They hold a ton back.
They do. And they're known for it. Let's see. Let's get to some of the other comments that have come in the last several moments with hashtag HJB and hashtag HJosh.
And I'm still trying to find out who gave him the attorney that information. I asked him if it was the FBI. I would assume it's the FBI, but he hasn't responded to that yet. So I'm waiting on that.
Paula, hashtag HeyJB, is there going to be a press conference? What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think I'm leaning towards no?
Really?
I'm leaning towards just a release. What do you think? You
just given your
inclination.
So, just the media exposure to this case, I think it would be proper to do a news conference just to bring the media in and have some questions answered, just to kind of put to rest a lot of these questions that are floating around. I think it would benefit them more, the agency, just because then if they can open. This is
interesting because based on our experiences as reporters, your initial gut told you that you think that there's going to be a press conference today, and I thought that the chances was 1 in 100.
Yeah. I mean, look, they could just send the report and then just get inundated from all the reporters about questions that we don't have the answers to. Or they could give a news conference, say, here's the report, we're going to release it. This is what we found. This is what we have on the case. We'll open the floor for questions, and they can decide to answer them or not. But at least it makes the official record and gives people answers that they're willing to answer, the questions that they want to answer, and then it just calms the case down a little bit. So, I mean, for them, I think it is a beneficial move. But again, what do I know?
It feeds the public demand for answers. I just, the FBI in their press conferences, I can't imagine a forum where they announce this information and then they open it up to questions, because that's usually, the FBI doesn't.
No, it's a good point.
And just to like say, all right, what questions do you have?
No, well, on your point.
Well, excuse me, let me go down the list of 1 million questions that we still have, because how long do you have, FBI? Because I have in my notes at least 30, 40 questions that I would like answered.
You bring up a good point, because, Gabby Petito didn't kill herself. We know it was strangulation, and somebody's out there who killed her. And so as long as that's an open investigation and Brian Laundrie was the last person essentially to be involved, as far as I know, that's a sensitive part of the investigation. So you're right. I don't think they'll answer questions, but they have a forum where they can put out the information that they know. Otherwise, they're just going to be continually inundated. But I don't think they care, because they're the FBI and they're not going to respond anyway.
I'm very, listen, I could be 100% wrong. There could be a press conference in an hour. It could be announced at any moment.
Given the media exposure and how big this case has been around the country, it seems appropriate to give a short news conference, just say, this is the latest, this is the cause of death, the manner of death, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think it's more common that, or more likely rather, that it would be in the form of just a pretty standard release. But we'll see everybody. Let's see what happens at 3 o'clock Eastern, and see if anything does happen around that time. Cecilia, #HeyJB, did they confirm a gun was involved? Wondering if the partial skull could be from the environmental damage. And again, I'll read this from Steven Bertolino. Chris and Roberta Laundrie have been informed that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head, and the manner of death was suicide. Chris and Roberta are still mourning the loss of their son and are hopeful these findings bring closure to both families. Gunshot wound to the head, that pretty much confirms that a gun was used. Carly Pearson, #HeyJB, #HeyJosh. Now that they have a cause of death for Brian, do you think that they will ever come out and make a statement on whether it was Brian that killed Gabby? So this is now the logical next step.
Yeah, and this piggybacks a comment I just got too. If there was enough evidence, could Brian be charged posthumously? And if they were to find that his parents knew something, what would happen to them?
I don't know if they would. You can't. And we've talked about this on stream. Filing charges against a person who is deceased. I think that would be the forum for a press conference.
Oh, for sure.
That would be the forum for a press conference.
They have enough evidence they could say that X person was involved.
Because otherwise, it's not going to ever get brought out in a court of law. There's never going to be a murder trial. Right. So
you can't defend a dead person.
The forum would be in that to share some information to the public. That forum would be a press conference where they would say, we're not here to file charges. We can't file charges against the suspect in this case because the suspect is deceased.
Right.
That deceased person is Brian Laundrie. If based on the comment here from Carly, if that's entirely what happened as far as the manual strangulation cause of death for Gabby Petito, but this is now going to continue into December, or maybe January, or maybe beyond. as to
and
when
this may stay quiet for a very long time.
It could, it could. But the public,
it's the unfortunate part about it.
And we know from covering this story as extensively as we have, Josh, we know that the public. So there's different. Let me put it this way. There's different sort of people that follow this story. Some out there want the FBI to stand up in front of a podium, to stand there in front of the bright lights, so to speak, and announce the results of their investigation. And then there are other people out there who feel they are so 100% in their minds or in their hearts that they know what happened in between Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, that they don't need the FBI to come forward and announce it. They feel like that this is so black and white, clear cut, and they've moved on to and they're not obsessing on this story from a day-to-day basis. Does that make sense? That there are the two sort of people out there that want there to be that announcement from the FBI, and then the others who are just saying, I would much rather see FBI resources be committed to other investigations that are more pertinent, because because in the minds of the public, or at least so many out there, they feel that they know exactly what happened between Brian and Gabby.
Yeah, and I think, it would be a bummer to see this case just go cold and then think back, 5-10 years later. I wonder what ever happened with that case. There's so many of those missing person cases that happen when, even one that I've covered for 20 years. I wonder if they ever found her. I wonder if they ever, and that's frustrating to hear, because that's what realistically happens on cases that just fall off the radar. If they don't get any media attention, and that's the sad reality, especially with missing person cases. If there's no support there to put the message out, a lot of those cases go that direction. Now, we do have two bodies at this point. So there's an active crime scene still being looked at with Gabby's situation. So I don't think that investigation ends. I think that obviously there's too many questions left. So, yeah, the hope is you'll get some answers, and we'll hear that news conference down the line saying this is what happened. We can put some closure on it and have a little bit of justice. I know the family wants that, and everybody else wants that. But, yeah, it's one of those things where it comes down to evidence. It comes down to, I think there would be some resources on this for as long as possible, because they want to solve that crime. As long as there's an open case, as far as I understand, they'll have an FBI agent on the case, if not several, for a while at least, to see if they can get any answers, because this isn't over yet.
Use hashtag HeyJB. Let's do this. Use hashtag HeyJB. Use hashtag HeyJosh. Are you still seeking that FBI
confirmation,
that FBI results-based announcement of what they have on this investigation into the death of Gabby Petito? Or are you more in the camp? Are you more in the mindset of based on everything that we know at this stage of where we are, at least public information, are you one of the people out there that feels that we've gone over this enough? You feel like you know what has happened, and it's time to look ahead and not backwards. There are people out there that do feel that way. So I want to give everybody the opportunity. Use hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJosh, and we'll throw up a flurry of comments up here answering that question. We're going to be here live another 10 minutes on stream.
Yep.
But what we might do is what we'll do is, if there is an announcement at 3 o'clock, we'll come back on stream and we'll discuss it more with you based on whether or not there is a 3 o'clock Eastern update of some kind. So let's get to this comment from Sherry Hutchison. Hashtag HeyJB, do you think the parents will be charged with anything? And Josh, we've talked about this right now. They aren't charged with anything, and there's no evidence or no knowledge at this time that they
are guilty of anything.
Right. So do we think the parents will be charged with anything? We can't say, because we just don't know what the FBI knows. And now maybe Misty here, hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJosh. Now we wait for official DNA analysis? Is that the next step?
The report, I think, will help indicate if they're for certain that's him, and they have the report from the anthropologist and the medical examiner. That may include a DNA profile and analysis. So we don't know yet.
All right, now we have a flurry.
That would be good, because then that would put to rest any idea that people think maybe it's not him, even though they just announced how he died and the manner of death and cause of death.
Okay, we got a flurry of comments that are now just coming in. Let's see. Erica Snyder Dewberry. Hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJosh. I want details. I want FBI talk. I want reasoning. I want the notebook details.
That's the majority of Twitter followers.
Yeah,
in this case.
I think that But we do get the comments from time to time saying, like we know this is so. And again, the estimation
if it was my kid, I'd want this thing to never stop.
That's interesting.
Petito's family, I would want this thing to go on, regardless of resources and costs. I would fight, as they are fighting. They're putting the word out for other people's missing person cases. They're with the foundation, everything. They're doing great work. But I would want, as a dad, I would want every resource possible used until we figured out what happened. And I would probably spend my life savings trying to figure it out.
Dad of the year, Josh Benson, everybody. Yeah. Let's get to this comment from Elaine or Ellen. I can't see. #HJB, #Josh. I still want answers from the FBI, what they have. Kevin Dale, #HJB. I just really want to know what happened to Gabby. Lexi, #HJB, #Josh. I want to hear from the FBI.
Yep.
If you're watching right now and you've been watching 45 minutes now into our stream, likely you're on this stream because you want answers and you want the FBI to come forward with what they have. And again, there are so many people out there who want justice for Gabby. Let's talk about justice for Gabby for a second. I had Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mom, Joe Petito, Gabby's father, and Tara Petito, Gabby's stepmom, on the stream. Was that last week? My goodness, November has really flown by. Yeah, it was last week. And I asked them what justice for Gabby is, what it means to them, and at least publicly what they said to me, and they said during the interview, the live interview on WFLA Now, is they said that justice for them is ensuring this doesn't happen in the future. They are looking forward, not backward, at least publicly. That's what they said to me, that justice for them is using the Gabby Petito Foundation to ensure that this similar situation never has to happen to anybody else in the future. If it can be prevented, let's do something about it and prevent it.
Right.
But justice for Gabby, for so many people out there, are those who want it definitively put in the record book, so to speak. This is what happened to Gabby. This is who did it, and this is the result of the investigation.
And look, I'd just like to make a note, too, that Gabby has propelled a whole new interest in missing person cases. I'm on Twitter every day. At 1:30, I'm on Twitter for a Josh Live Space, is what I call it. So I jump on there at 1:30, and we talk about missing person cases, news of the day, whatnot. But there is an online community out there that is so focused on helping find information in missing person cases that daily, this is what these people do. They're out there trying to find information. They're trying to get a hold of law enforcement. These smaller town police departments, they're pressuring to release Amber Alerts. And I'm seeing this stuff every day. And this is all pretty much a direct result of Gabby's case, because people took a lot of anger and a lot of energy, and they're directing it by what I think they feel is a positive outlook and a positive energy to push in to try to solve some of these missing person cases. We had a case the other day with Noah Claire and Amber Claire we followed very closely. 2 kids, the dad took both the niece and the son and took off to California. The pressure was put on. They released an Amber Alert. The kids were found. some mom out in California noticed them walking down the street, made a call. It all played out so quickly, and it was so unbelievable. So I think this case Gabby's case is really putting a lot of pressure on other missing person cases and creating this community of sleuths out there that want to help. And so it's cool to see. It's cool to see a lot of people get attention now, because a lot of people don't have their missing person cases receive any media attention or even attention online. So
and the family too has called for a more advanced alert system to be put in place for adults, and whether or not that actually gets instituting anything federally. That's what the Petitos and the Schmidts want to see, is a federal adult alert system passed. And there's been various attempts. This isn't new. There have been various attempts to get something passed. And some states like Texas they have the clear alert.
They have an Amber Alert. They have a Silver Alert. There's even a Blue Alert, but all for different things in different scenarios. But yeah, I think the alert system needs to be looked at.
There was an Ashanti Alert. Ashanti Alert that was passed a couple of years ago, but that you have to fit certain criteria for all of these alerts, right? And you know this, Josh. We know this from working in the media. You can't just submit somebody for an Amber Alert or a Silver Alert. They have to fall into very specific criteria. And the Ashanti Alert, the criteria there would be somebody who is mentally or physically disabled, or somebody who fits that criteria. I forget the exact words, but fits that criteria. But is there a space for a missing person alert for adults if they hit certain criteria? Because then what is that criteria? A lot of adults go missing And I'd be curious, Josh. I'm sure you would be as well. How many adults go missing in this country on a day-to-day basis? And it's about.
I just saw that stat, and it's a lot.
It's a lot,
yeah.
And it's about protecting the integrity of the alert system so that we're not firing out, 16 alerts a day for somebody who goes missing.
Right.
It's got to be something that meets certain criteria so that it meets the level of urgency required for someone to be, to qualify for that level of an alert to be put out on. And I'm talking about the buzzing that goes off on your phones.
Right. Because look, when that happens, the journalists around the country get that alert, and the newsrooms quickly turn that around and put it on the air. So suddenly, if a person A disappears and gets no attention, and they've been missing a month, all of a sudden, an Amber Alert is announced. That person's on the TV within minutes.
Yeah, minutes, seconds.
And all of a sudden, eyeballs everywhere are seeing it online. They're seeing it maybe on here. They're seeing it on TV. And all of a sudden, people can be proactive and take action. The challenge is, though, what I'm still noticing that's pretty archaic is the communication between law enforcement agencies. You could have a law enforcement agency on the East Coast and something like somebody in San Diego, California, almost with this Claire case, something similar. It took a long time to get an Amber Alert announced, and I don't think they were necessarily sharing information as well as they could have been. And this really gets detrimental when it's a smaller town police department, or you're kind of out in the country where they don't have a ton of resources. How can you pull all those people together on a uniform system so they can get ahead of the game a lot faster and help find people, because time is of the essence when somebody disappears?
Very true. And I'm curious to see where this goes. I know that Joe Petito has talked to Governor Ron DeSantis. Joe Petito, a Vero Beach resident, spoke to Governor Ron DeSantis. So very interested to where it goes from here. Let's get one more #HeyJB comment before we have to wrap up this stream on WFLA Now. And Samantha Ward asking #HeyJB, has there been FBI agents out there with metal detectors? And this question being asked because now the question is, where is the gun? Where is the firearm that was used by Brian Laundrie? Gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. Where is the gun, and what process was done here at the Carlton Reserve to potentially find a firearm there at the site? And So I remember from Eagle 8 HD, Josh, there was a lot of tree cover on the area where the remains were found, and it was really hard to see. And when they put up the TFR and Eagle had to go even higher in the air, it was even more difficult to see. Right. I don't remember them walking around with metal detectors, so I don't have an answer to this question. Do you?
No, but I just want to break this in from Allison Henning. It says Northport PD will release a statement after the FBI release comes down.
Interesting.
So she might be getting. It sounds like Northport's going to plan their statement, but letting FBI announce it first. So that gives us indication an FBI statement or release is imminent. So thank you, Allison, for that. That just came out from Allison. So we're on the lookout for both things, and any indication from the attorney today that could possibly happen today.
I'm going to explain where this goes, but I know Josh has to get going. Josh, any final thoughts?
No, I think this was. I think a lot of people saw something coming. They were waiting for something specific. The gun was interesting because there is no gun that we know of from this suicide. We don't know if it's still in the reserve. We don't know if the FBI has the gun. But that is going to be the talk now, and we're awaiting hopefully an FBI announcement or a release of some sort. And we just heard that Northport PD will release its own statement after the FBI comes out with their statement. As far as what I'm working on, invite you to come check me out on Twitter every day at WFLA Josh. I do a Twitter Spaces, it's called, an audio-only chat where we can come in and ask questions. I do it every day at 1:30, so I'd love to see you guys out there. Working on a special guest tomorrow, so stop by if you can. And it's a great platform, and I continue to roll out any updates I find on this case there as well. And improvements being made here, JB, on the WFLA Now. So
yeah, we've got some.
Look what I can do here. I can go zoom. I can zoom.
Oh yeah, let's show that. I hit the wrong button. There we go. Look at that.
I can zoom in, and I don't even need your help to adjust the screen. So
no,
JB's been busy improving the toys over here. I love it.
Working behind the scenes so that we can do more for you on WFLA Now in the months ahead. I think that we. Through covering this story, Josh, we've met a whole lot of new people online, have we not? And some great people out there, and so just trying to do everything we can to invest in our setup here and invest as much as we can in our programming as much as you've invested in us. So we very much appreciate everybody who's been watching. And folks, as far as on air tonight, catch Josh Benson first at 4, right, Josh?
That's right. We'll be there. Well, obviously, this will be one of the top stories, if not the lead. So we will talk more about this. And if we have any information from the FBI in Northport by then, definitely report on it.
Josh Benson, everybody. Follow him online,
so
on social media. And real quick, so let me explain where this is going to go now from here. So we're gonna step away from our stream for just a short time as we process this information. Again, I have to do this a third time. A big apology for the initial tweet and the initial, it was all done in one fell swoop. Sending over a social media post. It was not Brian Laundrie's death has been ruled a suicide. My initial push was a homicide. I got crossed up because it's a Gabby Petito homicide investigation. Just a slip of the words there. We all make mistakes, folks. Big apologies for that. So if you see any screenshots or anything online about me calling it anything other than a suicide, that was just an erroneous tweet, an erroneous Facebook post, and I have to be very transparent with you. I owe it to all of you with all the trust that you've put into me to own up to when I make a mistake, and I made a mistake in that very, very initial moment when we got in the information, and we were all kind of scrambling very quickly. And the reason we were scrambling so quickly was because we wanted to get up on stream as quickly as possible for you, our audience, wherever you are watching from. So we really appreciate everybody watching here on WFLA Now. We're stepping away, but 3 o'clock Eastern, that's 27 minutes from right now, could be interesting. Is that when the FBI is going to release their update, which would, as we understand it, which would confirm what Steven Bertolino has told us? And is there any information in there, any additional information that we don't have presently? Is there more pieces of the puzzle that are going to be revealed in the FBI's announcement when, in fact, they do make it? It could be at 3 o'clock today. It could be beyond that today. It could be at some point tomorrow. We're still awaiting an exact word, but Northport Police confirming to us as well that they are going to speak after the FBI speaks. So still a lot to come. But if you want the very latest, click on the link in the description on this video. It'll take you over to WFLA.com. Our hardworking staff behind the scenes has been working on the very, very latest to update that information, the article that we have for you on WFLA.com. So please give a click to the link in the Facebook Live or YouTube Live description if you're seeking more with where we are on this story. Folks, we're going into we'll be right back mode, but we'll be back if there is an update from the FBI at 3 o'clock or even later on today. We're ending on Facebook, staying live on YouTube, staying live on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, so you can continue to chat here on Facebook. We will be ending this stream, but back on stream if there is an update later on today, this November 23rd, 2021. We'll be right back. To our audience on YouTube, we just got in a breaking update coming your way in a few minutes on WFLA Now. The medical examiner's office has released the document that's coming your way on social media, and we'll be back on stream here momentarily.
news on WFLA Now. Here's JB Biunno.
Here's the document put out moments ago from the District 12 Medical Examiner's Office, detailing that the cause of death is determined to be a gunshot wound of the head. For 23-year-old Brian Laundrie, the manner of death has been determined to be a suicide. Hey there, everybody. JB Biunno here with you live on WFLA Now. Live only on YouTube, WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We're working on potentially getting another Facebook stream organized for our Facebook audience here momentarily. But this is the release that was just sent out, and like clockwork, right at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, the Medical Examiner's Office, District 12, that's primarily Sarasota. That's the Medical Examiner's Office that we have been calling repeatedly over the last several weeks, especially trying to get an update. This document has been put out. It was sent over our way by law enforcement. And I'm going to read it as follows for our audience that's might be on a cell phone. It's kind of hard to see when it's in the palm of your hand, but I'll read as follows. November 23rd, 2021, on the death of Brian C. Laundrie. The District 12 Medical Examiner's Office has completed our investigation into the death of Brian C. Laundrie. The investigation included the following: scene response by medical examiner personnel, complete examination of the recovered skeletal remains, consultation with a forensic ontologist, including dental comparison for identification, consultation with a forensic anthropologist, including skeletal reconstruction, confirmation of the identity of the remains by both dental comparison and DNA analysis. The cause of death has been determined to be gunshot wound to the head. The manner of death has been determined to be suicide. Complete signed reports will be on file at the District 12 Medical Examiner's Office in accordance with Florida statutes and at the request of the FBI. These reports and other information pertaining to the medical examiner's investigation of Mr. Laundrie's death may not be made public or released until the law enforcement investigation is complete. That last paragraph, what that says is, what that translates to is this is what we have for the time being, and anything else that would get released, any information uncovered by the medical examiner's office that's not going to be released by them, it's going to be released, or if it is released by them, it's not going to be until the FBI concludes their ongoing investigation. So scene response, complete examination, ontologist, anthropologist, odontologist is the correct pronunciation. Anthropologist, confirmation of the identity of the remains by both dental comparison and DNA analysis. People were asking in our previous stream about DNA analysis. We're going to try to get up on stream with more of our WFLA staff momentarily as soon as we have more information to pass along. That's being organized for the next several minutes ahead here live on WFLA Now. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, JB Biunno here with you live on WFLA now. To our very patient YouTube audience, thanks so much for sticking around with us. We're going to try to go over the latest of what this means and where this goes from here. But if you're just joining us, Brian Laundrie's death officially has been ruled a suicide, and the cause of death, a gunshot wound of the head, according to the District 12 Medical Examiner's Office. Social media, of course, talking about this news back and forth. A lot of folks talking about what this means, and really the big question that is surfacing on social media is, where is the firearm, where is the gun, and when are we going to get answers from the FBI? So we're going to stay here with you live on WFLA now. We might be having a Facebook live stream here momentarily. Depends on all the inner workings of what goes on behind the scenes here at WFLA. In the meantime, can't just let you guys look at the same "We'll Be Right Back" slate over and over again and listen to the same music over and over again. So let's see who we got. Well, let's head over to the YouTube live comment section. Sharon O'Neill saying hello. We've got Carla Dinsmore. Glad JB is back. Jim Hawthorne calling for Masa Saidi, who's currently working on another investigation. She's about 20 feet behind me, working on another investigation. Connor saying hello. Nelly saying hello. Chris V throwing out the peace sign. Hello to everybody on YouTube. So let's talk to you, YouTube, what this means going forward. Brian Laundrie went into the Carlton Reserve and took his own life, is what this means. And we have some interesting bullet points to go over. And let me make sure that I bring this up so that I can read it in front of me here on this screen. And the investigation, including the following, according to D12, the District 12 Medical Examiner's Office: scene response by medical examiner personnel. We knew that. That was the medical examiner's office getting there to the scene that day at the Carlton Reserve. Complete examination of the recovered skeletal remains. This is, of course, something else that we knew as well. They were going to, not only did they recover the skeletal remains, but they did a complete examination of those skeletal remains. Consultation with a forensic odontologist, including dental comparison for identification. Consultation with a forensic anthropologist for skeletal reconstruction. That's interesting. Skeletal reconstruction is interesting. Confirmation of the identity of the remains by both dental comparison and DNA analysis. So DNA analysis has been done and confirms what the dental comparison told them, that this is Brian Laundrie. And there have been so many people who have been commenting and messaging me saying, JB, is he really dead? JB, is he really deceased? JB, I don't believe it. JB, I still think that he got away. And hopefully this puts that all to rest. Not only do they have the thorough dental comparison that was done, but a DNA analysis also was done as well to confirm the identity of the remains, that is Brian Laundrie there at the Carlton Reserve, the remains that were found. Let's see here. So, skeletal reconstruction. And I want to get to some of the YouTube comments that are coming in as well. You know, so people who have been asking about the gun, where is the gun? I said on the previous stream, or earlier on in this stream, I would be absolutely shocked if the gun wasn't in the possession of the FBI. But let's not forget, too, that the FBI also did miss some of the belongings that were there, some of the things that were later found by members of the public at the Carlton Reserve. So is there a chance? Is there a chance that the FBI didn't recover a firearm? I guess it's entirely possible, but we really just don't know what the FBI has in their possession. We do know that they have a book bag. We do know that they have the notebook. We don't know if they have a firearm. And that's going to be very interesting to find out if there is, in fact, a firearm that was obtained by the FBI at the Carlton Reserve. I'm getting a call here from 8 on Your Side investigator Walt Buteau. So we don't know if a gun was found. So to Belinda Edwards in the comment section, hashtag HAB, was a gun found? We don't know if a gun was discovered. We just know that that human remains were discovered, skeletal remains were discovered. Tinkerbell Tina, hashtag KJB, a suicide note is probably in the notebook as well. It's entirely possible. I'd be very curious to find out the statistics on how many suicides are done with or without a suicide note. Suicides are extraordinarily difficult to cover in the news. We have policies and procedures when it comes to how we go about covering suicide. It's, of course, a suicide just being such a tragic event, somebody taking their own life. So it's extraordinarily important that we be very, very mindful of the fact that this is a death as a result of suicide, according to the medical examiner's office here. Will there be a news conference? I really don't know if there's going to be a press conference. Let me make this very clear. This is my experience in covering this story and other stories and other FBI investigations. I just don't foresee an FBI press conference today or tomorrow. It's entirely possible, but I think it's more likely that it doesn't happen. Let's not forget, I say this all the time, and people know that I have my sayings, and I go back to certain things that I repeat over and over again for our audience. The FBI releases results, and while the FBI, when it comes to their investigation, they release results, and this is the result of a medical examination, an autopsy that was performed on Brian Laundrie's remains. The FBI, of course, very much a part of, and really the lead agency in charge in the investigation, but the FBI did not have, this was done by District 12 Medical Examiner's Office here in Sarasota County, Florida. So the FBI calling their own press conference would be a surprise, in my opinion, in my estimation. I don't foresee them out of the blue calling a press conference. I think we're going to have a stream with 8 on Your Side's Walt Buteau coming up, by the way. I think that's coming up at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to stay with you guys for another 10 or so minutes and answer some of your questions on YouTube, but I think we're going to be back on WFLA Now at 4 o'clock. That's at least the plan. Vanilla Rose, hashtag KJB on YouTube. What's your best guess on how long it will take before we hear the notebook results? Wow, I don't even know where to begin. You know what's interesting is that the anthropology results, we had a timetable. And the only reason we had a timetable was because we spoke to so many experts on when we could expect skeletal remains, the examination of a set of skeletal remains, how long that would take. And every single solitary anthropologist that we spoke to and heard from said it's going to be likely that the normal window they would say roughly would be end of November towards maybe into early December. Here we are. It was right on the money as far as that timetable. But the notebook, we have no idea the condition that the notebook is in. We have no idea who would be doing that examination, where that examination would be. We know that the remains are examined here in Sarasota County. We know that they were, here in the Tampa Bay area. As far as the skeletal remains, but the notebook could be sent to a variety of different laboratory facilities across the United States. It's all about finding the right expert to determine what was in that notebook, if it's necessary. Let's not forget the notebook could be fully intact. If it was, fully contained within the dry bag and the dry bag didn't let any water spill, there's a possibility that they don't need too much of an examination and that they know what was in the notebook and it did contain something of value or didn't contain anything of value. So let's also be very mindful of that as well. Hashtag AJB from Munda Allen. They couldn't call it a suicide without the gun, ? Skeletal remains, ? So, where is the gun is a big question. It's a huge question. But I believe that a forensic examiner can rule a cause of death to be via gunshot wound, even if they don't have the firearm. You don't necessarily have to have the firearm to definitively determine if a gunshot wound is what caused someone to be deceased, whether it's via homicide or suicide. If they have evidence, forensic evidence, that it was caused by a bullet, by the firing of a firearm, then that's the evidence that they have. And then it's, of course, how many situations has there been where it's a forensic examiner has ruled that there has been a death or a death via gunshot wound, but they don't have the gun, that the gun has been discarded of. In this situation, we don't know where the gun is. We don't know if the gun is with the FBI. We don't know if the gun somehow, if there's any small chance it's still out there at the Carlton Reserve unrecovered. These are pertinent questions, but people asking, yes, where's the gun? Looking at some more YouTube comments. Again, I think we're gonna have 8 on your sides. Walt Buteau joining us for a stream. Give me a thumbs up if you guys want to see Walt on stream, because he's gonna make some moves as far as moving some things over the course of his schedule today to be here with us on stream. He's our senior investigator here at WFLA, so throw a thumbs up in the comment section if you guys want to see Walt Buteau join us and to give us his analysis. Let's see. Oh yeah, a lot of thumbs up. Okay, cool. Chris V is wondering if the gun is going to be found at the reserve. Don't know where it's going to be found. But again, it's not that we don't even know if it's going to be found. Here's the thing. It might have already been found by the FBI. They just didn't announce it, or they announced it, or they discovered it after their press conference. That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if the gun was discovered, but it was discovered after that press conference that day by Special Agent in Charge McPherson. Very curious. Some more comments for a few more minutes, and then we're going to go back into we'll be right back mode in favor of getting Walt in position and ready to go for our next full stream. Jessica B, hashtag AJB. I wonder who the gun was registered to. Where did he get a gun? Where did he get a gun? You know. Don't know. We don't know. Elizabeth Gregory bringing it right back. Hashtag HAB. Who killed Gabby? Everyone wants to jump from A to B and connect the dots, and we can't do that. It's important that we don't do that as far as our journalistic integrity goes. We don't make that announcement. The FBI makes that announcement. Reporters report the facts, and the facts of the case are this. The FBI hasn't definitively said who killed Gabby Petito. She died of manual strangulation because of the Teton County Coroner's press conference in Wyoming. We know that. Their autopsy results that were performed there in Teton County, Wyoming. We don't know that Brian Laundrie is responsible for it. He is the sole person of interest, has been the sole person of interest, and that just immediately, it's so easy to jump to that conclusion, but we just don't know for certain whether or not it was, in fact, Brian Laundrie. So we'll find out, hopefully, at the next stage. Here's the thing. Gabby Petito dies of homicide. Autopsies performed, autopsy results released. Brian Laundrie, his remains are found, autopsy performed. Now we have procedurally, as you would expect, we're going now procedurally through the ABCs of how this would go down as far as the FBI's procedure and how they would release information. Next up, would have been a week ago if you had asked me what's the next step. It's the FBI or the medical examiner's office releasing the results of the autopsy. Now we have that. Now the question is what's next? Because now we're in, okay, the investigation is where exactly? And we go into this general, we've called it uncharted territory now. Now we knew this was going to happen. We knew that they were going to release the autopsy results eventually. The big question now is what's next. FBI experts out there, we need to get you on WFLA now, or and you'll see them across network news tonight. What actually, because listen, the FBI is going to go home to their families for Thanksgiving, take the holiday, and December. I was sure that the work continues in December, but then we have Christmas. What's going to happen? As far as there's no pressing urgency right now, other than the public demand, there's no pressing urgency right now for the FBI to do anything else. There's nothing procedurally, no obvious next step for there to be the release of information. The obvious next step a week ago was this. The document you're looking at here, we were waiting for this document. It's here now. The next document, we have no idea. No idea what the next document's going to be. We have no idea what the next press release is going to be, the next press conference, the next update. And we don't know if that update's going to happen in a week, a month, a year, or a decade. We don't know. Time of death. Who asked about time of death? I'm very glad you brought that up. Who brought up time of death? I just saw it. I want to just shout out the commenter. There it is. Chelsea Lawrence, #AJB. Will time of death be determined? I'm glad you asked, because that's the glaring difference between Teton County and District 12 here in Florida. Teton County in Wyoming, when they announced it, it was on a Zoom call with the Teton County coroner, Dr. Brent Blue, and we were able to ask some questions, some follow-up questions. You guys remember it was kind of an interesting press conference. Brian Enton was hacked. John Walsh asked some questions as well, and it was a lot of people asking a whole lot of questions and us not getting a whole lot of answers. But the one answer that we were able to get was an estimated time of death for Gabby Petito, which was towards the end of August. We don't have that with this release, and this being a release and not a press conference, we're not able to answer that, or excuse me, ask that very, very, very pertinent follow-up question. When is it believed that Brian Laundrie passed away? When did he die of suicide? When did that actually occur? Is there an estimated time window? And let's not forget that we're dealing with two very different autopsies. We had Gabby Petito's remains, which there was just more there for the Teton County coroner to work with, as we understand it, based on what was the autopsy in Florida, which was skeletal remains, partial human skull. This makes it much more challenging to determine things like a potential time of death, but we don't have that here in this document. It's widely believed that his remains were there for some time because they were skeletal. So, and Northport police have commented that it's in all likelihood that he went into the Carlton Reserve and within days, if not within a day, was dead, and then now, as we know, dead by suicide. So, but we definitively don't have it here in this release. Ellen Underwood, #HAB. Has there been a response from the Petito and Schmidt family? Hey, from the UK. I have been checking my phone. Nothing from the Petitos, nothing from the Schmidts. I would imagine that this day for them is strange, because it tells us something but tells us nothing all at the same time. Or maybe for them it tells them more. And you know what? I'd be very curious to ask them when they found out this information. Have they known for some time? Have they known for? And when I say sometime, did they find out around the same time this afternoon as the Laundrie family, or soon thereafter? But no, to answer your question, I've not heard from the Schmidts or the Petitos today, Gabby Petito's family. All right, folks, I'm going to step away for a moment. And by a moment, I mean we're going to be back live at around 4 o'clock Eastern. That's in 19 minutes from now, roughly, with 8 on your side investigator Walt Buteau. Answering some more questions for us now that Brian Laundrie's death officially has been ruled a suicide. Gunshot wound to the head is the official cause of death here in the medical examiner's report, which you can read on WFLA.com. We'll be right back with 8 on your side investigator Walt Buteau. Folks, JB Biunno here with you live on WFLA Now. I'm always sharing information here with you, sharing some more information with you. Cannot track down Walt Buteau, our 8 on Your Side senior investigator. Might have to launch our own investigation as to where Walt is. He was on the phone with me and he said he would be here. We're tracking him down. As soon as he's able to sit down here with us, we're back here with you live on WFLA Now. To our YouTube audience and our WFLA app and WFLA website audience, just didn't want to leave you guys hanging. So paging Walt Buteau, hopefully we'll have him here momentarily. Stand by for stream.
WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Streaming live on WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's JB Biunno.
What's next in the investigation to the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie? After today, the medical examiner of District 12 in Sarasota County, Florida, releasing this document detailing that the cause of death is determined to be a gunshot wound of the head of Brian Laundrie, the manner of death determined to be a suicide. Where do things go from here? WFLA Now's JB Biunno, 8 on your side. Senior investigator Walt Buteau here with you live on WFLA Now. We tracked down Walt. He's here with us now in the building. Walt, great to have you here on stream.
Good to be here.
As our audience kind of builds, we're going to allow folks to chime in. We really want to feature, in this stream in particular, we really want to feature your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt comments and questions, as we do here interactive journalism, as we do here on WFLA Now. Want to know what people are thinking out there, with how many people have been following this story. And how many people have been following you and I, Walt, and looking for answers. We want to make you, wherever you're watching from, very much part of the experience. So use hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt, and we'll feature your comments. We'll animate them here on screen. But, Walt, I want to give you an opportunity, your first time here on stream today, just to kind of reveal your thoughts now that we have this information. Brian Laundrie dying of suicide, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. This has been something that people have been talking about for weeks as to whether or not this was going to be the outcome. We now have it officially as the outcome from the medical examiner's office. And for those folks out there that have been saying, still, the conspiracy theorists out there that say that they still don't believe that Brian Laundrie is deceased, in this document, in the final bullet point, it's both dental comparison and DNA analysis. DNA analysis has been conducted, Walt, on the remains to confirm that those remains, yes, are in fact that of Brian Laundrie. What's your initial reaction to learning of this news and reading this document here today?
Well, I think it's interesting that initially suicide was not a surprise, I don't think, because we sort of had heard rumblings of that. The gun was a surprise, but then you think to yourself, how does one kill themselves in the middle of the woods without a gun? I think the biggest surprise about the weapon is that we had not heard about it. It had not been released. The FBI held that news conference the day the body was found and talked about basically, they talked about one backpack, or maybe they were talking about the wet bag. We then learned there was a wet bag and a backpack. So now we know, okay, and a notebook and some other things. But you wondered what was in the backpack, or what was in the two backpacks. And then, of course, you wonder where. We'd like to know, I would ask, where was the weapon found? Did he commit suicide where he was found, or was the body brought there by animals out there? All those questions are unanswered unless the FBI holds a news conference.
Yeah. And
now you wonder, obviously, my big thought would be, what happens next in the Petito case, in the Petito homicide? Does Brian somehow go from person of interest to more than that? Everybody believes at this point, they suspect that he did it, but he still is only a person of interest. Will that change in the coming days or weeks?
Very curious to know where this goes next. There has been a general overall blueprint for how this was going to be conducted as far as the public release of information. Walt, you and I have been talking off-stream and on-stream the last month or so. We knew that after Brian Laundrie's remains were found at the Carlton Reserve, we knew that the autopsy report was the next logical step.
Yeah.
We knew that probably the next time we would be on stream with a significant update to share with our audience would be when we have this document that is now published online and a public record. It's here in the center of your screen, clearly. We knew that when this document was public, we would have that update to share with people. But now that we have this, we don't know where this goes from here. There's no logical timetable for the next update to occur. The next steps are for this to go back now to Gabby, I think.
Right.
This now returns back to Gabby Petito.
Which is still an open case. That's an open investigation.
Ongoing investigation. Yeah. And I want to read, and if I'd like to, and it's been published all over. It's not on my Twitter page yet, but it's all over social media. Interestingly enough, Rick Stafford is the attorney for Gabby Petito's family. Nicole Schmidt, Joe Petito, Tara Petito, and Jim Schmidt. All of them being jointly represented by Rick Stafford, who you might have seen in the Dr. Phil interview. And they responded by, they say that they're not going to be releasing a statement, and they did so by releasing a statement, which always is interesting. So the non-statement reads in the form of a statement that reads as follows. The Schmidt and Petito family has been aware of the circumstances surrounding the suicide of the sole suspect in Gabby's murder. Gabby's family will not be making a statement at this time due to the request of the United States Attorney's Office and the Teton County Prosecutor's Office. The family was asked to not make any comments and let the FBI continue their investigation. The family was also asked to wait for the U.S. Attorney's Office to make a determination on whether any additional individuals will be charged. When that determination is made, we will have a statement. This non-statement tells us something.
That's a lot of information in that.
Tells us a whole lot.
The last two sentences. Read the last two sentences.
Listen
charged.
The family was also asked to wait for the U.S. Attorney's Office to make a determination on whether any additional individuals will be charged. When that determination is made, we will have a statement.
When, not if. Now, of course, when that determination is made could mean they determine not to charge anyone else.
But what this reads to me is that
they are looking into it, right?
Exactly. That they haven't come to the conclusion that no one is going to be charged other than the use of unauthorized act, the debit card fraud. Other than that, put that aside for a second. They haven't made a determination yet that no one is going to be charged in this case. They haven't come to that conclusion as to whether charges are going to be filed in relation to Gabby's death or in relation to Brian's death.
Significant though. Very significant, because that's the first really we've heard anyone on the record, not speculating, anyone on the record actually say that the FBI or intimate that the FBI is seemingly, from that statement, if you read it again, looking into potentially charging someone else.
The family, I'll read midway through. The family was asked to not make any comments and let the FBI continue their investigation. There's this belief out there, Walt, online, that this is done. That the FBI they have the cause of death for Gabby. They have the cause of death for Brian. Gabby died of manual strangulation in Teton County. Brian Laundrie died of suicide at the Carlton Reserve. All right, what's the next case? That's not how this works. The FBI is still continuously investigating the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie together. It's all part of one joint investigation effort by the FBI. And we don't know what the next logical step is, but the pendulum swing would lead you to believe that the next step, it all goes back to Gabby. And people want to know, and procedurally, people want to know, that is an ongoing and open homicide investigation by the FBI. And now there's going to be, and it all depends wherever you're watching from. I want to make this clear. Walt has been on the record in stating that the public demand for answers and information, that is heard by the FBI. The FBI isn't like this concrete wall that you can't get past. The FBI is very cognizant and very aware, like you have said, Walt, and to use your words, that they want their good press.
Sure.
They want their moment in the spotlight. They are very much aware that the public still has a demand for answers in this case. But I think it really falls on wherever you're watching from, I'm speaking to you, our audience, wherever you're watching from, to continuously look for updates on this story, because if the public goes quiet, there's less of that demand, that public demand for answers. Now, I think that the FBI is going to continue their ongoing investigation regardless of the fervor that is out there from the public. But the public continuously pressing for answers will, in all likelihood, hopefully, down the road at some point, a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, at some point, get us to that big release of information where we know what happened to Gabby Petito and what happened then subsequently to Brian Laundrie.
Yeah, and so now you just wonder what sort of evidence did they have before they lost sight of Brian to sort of close that gap between person of interest and suspect. The attorney for the Petitos and the Schmitts call him a suspect, but he's not. And again, the difference between person of interest and suspect, if you look at the legal definition, it's very, very close. So it's not a huge jump, but what sort of evidence could they have at that scene in Wyoming to pin the case, pin the crime on the man?
DNA?
Right there, that guy right there.
Could there be DNA? Is DNA part of it as far as the remains that were discovered in teeth? We don't know. We don't know what kind of evidence was on the remains of Gabby Petito. We don't know.
And the shocker, I mean, there's been many shockers in this story.
Yes.
Like one after another. But if someone else ends up charged, that would be quite the twist, I think. That would be a big, big twist. I know people are out there going, oh, no, I know who it would be, or we could suspect who it would be. But to me, that would be a huge twist that I don't think we saw coming. Many people might have seen it coming, but we did not see it coming if and when that happens, if that development happens.
So we're about to start answering your hashtag HJB, hashtag HWalt questions and comments and start going over this. This is what we do interactively to carry the conversation forward, as we bring you into that conversation because you, our audience, matters deeply to us as far as what you're saying on social media. But as far as the next steps, what is next? We don't know. We don't know what the next logical step is for the FBI. We don't know what the next logical step is for Northport Police, if they have any logical next step for them, for their agency. But it all swings back to Gabby and the Justice for Gabby calls that are online and more than online, on banner planes, on signs, on bumper stickers, on you name it. But it all really falls down to the FBI and where they are in their investigation, what they have found. Now let's get to some of the questions that have come in on social media now that we have that kind of in the rear view mirror. And we've had a bunch come in the last several minutes. Again, right now you can use hashtag HJB or hashtag HWalt to file in your question, your comment, or if you don't want your comment to be featured and spotlighted like we're about to do with who's first up, Lean J Holiday, like Lean's comment here. If you don't want your comment spotlighted like this, don't use the hashtag. We'll let your comment just scroll up on the screen. Lean here, hashtag HJB, where is the gun? And then throws up the, yeah, I'll do it, the shrug emoji. Yeah. Where's the gun?
Well, you know what? They might not have the gun.
Or they might. Or they might.
They might, but they might not have the gun. I mean, because, but have we seen them out there since they found the body? Not really. Remember when they found the body? They created a perimeter around a pretty from the sky. It looked
like a really weird polygon shape from your your 8th grade geometry class. It was kind of all over the place. That's right.
Normally at a crime scene they might use fence posts or something, or cars or something, but they had to use trees. I mean, is that when they were looking for the gun? But here's the thing. That's a great question. That is probably the number one. If you redid that article you did a couple weeks ago that did really well, great information, right? That's got to be that's the new number one, isn't it?
Where's the gun?
Where's the gun? Where's the gun? But again, they don't have to have a gun, right? All they have to have is a wound and a bull.
Let's point out the painfully obvious. Somebody in it, as dark and as grim as this is, just bear with us for a second with a suicide, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You're taking a firearm, you're pulling the trigger. And then, provided that it is a lethal wound to that individual, the firearm then drops.
Sure.
And drops it either would remain in the hand of the individual or it drops beside the individual, provided that, again, it is a fatal firing of that firearm. So then the remains would then, in essence, be right there with where the firearm is. So is there any chance that with the waters of, and just bear with me here, the waters of Carlton Reserve and how deep the water was there, and also too, let's not forget the wildlife there at the Florida at the rural Sarasota County Reserve, that is Carlton Reserve. Is there any chance the remains were drifted a bit and the gun is elsewhere? Is that even within the realm of possible?
Absolutely. I think it could have. I mean, so it's drier when this happens, theoretically, beginning of September sometime. It's drier, and then we have a rainy September. But are you? I mean, we're not
talking miles. We're talking feet, right? We're talking yards, feet.
But in a wetlands type area, do you go out to where it's slushy, muddy, and all that? I mean, I would imagine that area, that if it was underwater, was still at least damp during that time. Does someone wander out there to do something like this, or is it possible they did it one place and the body got dragged over there?
And this. I want to bring up Josh Benson's point from our previous stream. This is the type of question that you have when you send out a press release and don't do a press conference.
Yeah.
Because now you have a press, and again, we'll show it here on screen. We have this press release, and we'll throw up, Lean, thank you for your comment. We'll throw up Rachel's comment here, #HJB, #HWall, where did he get the gun and where is it now? We'll come to that in a second, Rachel. But when you have a press release and not a press conference, there's no opportunity for then follow-up questions. We have sent in follow-up questions. We're not getting any responses right now. But the big one would be, what's the status of the gun? Does the FBI have a gun in their possession, a gun that would match the ballistics and the thorough examination that was done of the skull? Is there a firearm that they have in possession that they believe is the gun that Brian Laundrie used to commit suicide? We don't know. We don't know if the FBI has that gun, and that leads us now to all of these questions. Versus if you have a press conference, we're able to ask that question straight up.
Keep in mind, medical examiners generally do not have news conferences.
Well, the Teton County coroner did.
I know that was unique.
That was
very unique.
Very unique.
Extremely unique. We generally, for these cases, you may get an interview with a medical examiner or the person who conducted the autopsy, but they don't hold a news conference unless it's on a TV show. So you're looking for the FBI or the Northport Police or the Sheriff's Office.
And this is why I've told this story before. When I was at home and I got this alert, I was cooking, and I got the alert on my phone that the Teton County coroner has called a press conference. I said, I was in disbelief. I said, what?
No, I get that. Yeah,
and it's because clearly in Florida it's irregular enough. They
everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's get to Rachel's comment. #HJB, #Walt. Where did he get the gun? Where is it now? Where is it now? Clearly we don't know. But where did he get it? What is there any information, Walt, as an investigative journalist, when it comes to tracking down whether or not somebody has a permit for a firearm?
It depends on the state, and I'm going to look it up. I've tried to do it in other states because we've had stories we've looked into where so-and-so was using his address to get his friend, the felon, a gun, that type of thing. But that was not public information. I'm going to say it's probably not public information here. And then, of course, we don't even know if it's a registered firearm. Where did he get the gun? That's a good question, but not hard to get a gun. And where is it now, of course, is the million-dollar question. The interesting thing, reflecting back, is when the FBI told us only that he had some personal things, including a notebook. I'm still kind of curious. I'd like to ask that FBI agent, on or off the record, why'd you mention the notebook? The notebook has been this tease, right?
Yeah.
And how do you mention a notebook if you have a gun? If
they had the gun at that time, they
don't have to tell us.
But then why mention the notebook?
Well, I said this to somebody on Twitter. If the notebook has created all these questions, I've heard notebook. I'm curious. I want to see the notebook. I want to see the notebook. I want to see what it's like. I want to see what kind of notebook is. I want to see, did he sketch in there? Did he write? Is it a journal?
There have been pictures on social media of Brian Laundrie writing into various notebooks and journal, or what appears to be journals, and that's
as much of a tizzy as the notebook has put many of us in. Can you imagine what the gun would mean?
Yeah.
The gun would be something else. So is that why the FBI didn't mention it? Did they mention the notebook to not throw us off, but you know what I mean? Did they mention the notebook to give us something? Or I was surprised. The FBI doesn't mention anything.
I'd like to know. The special agent in charge of McPherson was the one who made the comment. I'd be dying to ask if I could ask him just kind of like an off the record question, as we do when we talk to law enforcement officials.
Mention the notebook?
I would just say, did you go into the press conference thinking that okay, I'm going to talk about the backpack and I'm going to talk about the notebook and that's it? Was that the game, or was it just kind of a spontaneous? Yeah, these are the items that we found. Were you winging it, so to speak, in that press conference?
By the way, there's two bags. There's the there's the backpack, and there's the other bag, and you just want. There's got to be a lot of stuff in there that we'd like to know what was in there, and nobody's told us anything yet. Interesting
indeed. So Rachel, to answer your question, where did he get the gun? That's now a new question. Where did he get it? Where is it now? What's the history behind it? Claudette Woods, #HAB. I'm not buying it. There's some people out there that no matter what information, whatever law enforcement agency, it could be the FBI, it could be Northport Police, it could be the medical examiner, the coroner standing right next to you. All of these officials could be screaming from a rooftop, Brian Laundrie is deceased, and they're still going to be. What is she not
buying? She doesn't think he's deceased. She thinks it's.
I don't know. Claudette, let us know.
By the way, under Section 790.0601, personal identifying information of an individual who has applied or received a license to carry a concealed weapon or firearm is confidential and exempt. I don't know. I'm assuming that means that we cannot.
So we're not going to find out. We're not going to find out.
And again, we don't know whether or not he could have gotten it somewhere else. We do know from a story that I don't think we reported, but we looked at. Brian Laundrie did take Brian Laundrie with a matching birth date of Brian Laundrie. Did take the written test that is the first step to becoming a police officer, but he never entered into a police recruiting class. So there was some time over the last 2 or 3 years interest from Brian Laundrie to become a police officer, but again, did not ever enter into an academy. He did pass Brian Laundrie with the same birth date, who's from Florida, passed that test. We were never able to actually have anybody confirm it was the Brian Laundrie, but it would seem to indicate that same birth date, same name. So does that make him closer to having at least an interest in a weapon? Perhaps, but there's no reports of that other than. It's all speculation still.
Ryan, #KJB, do we know who the gun found in the water at Fort DeSoto belongs to? What are the odds that someone else shot him? No, this is a self-inflicted gunshot wound, as we've strenuously pointed out, based on what the FBI, the medical examiner's office has discovered as far as their examination of the remains forensically, the Brian Laundrie remains, that dental records and DNA analysis is confirmed is Brian Laundrie. But as far as the firearm that was found at Fort DeSoto, there's no evidence whatsoever that the firearm that was found at Fort DeSoto, the camping ground there, has any connection to Brian Laundrie whatsoever. And to make that connection, let me just make this clear. Making that connection would be irresponsible. I think that people naturally want to wonder. It's okay to wonder, but to say that one has to do with the other is definitively irresponsible, and it's misinformation. Do not believe it. Don't share it. Don't spread it. We know that the gun was found at Fort DeSoto. We know that Brian Laundrie died but there's timeline complications there that just don't add up. So, and
as far as what are the odds that someone else shot him? Look, we are often looking for more efficient government, and along those lines, we appear to be critics of government spending. But I do believe when a news release is handed out, I do believe that this is an accurate news release. And maybe I'm wrong, but I would say I'm 99.99999 repeating % sure that they know this was a suicide. And the reason you know it's a suicide are things like proximity, the way the wound is, or even the way that where it is, and was there anything that would show gunpowder residue, anything like that. So they're not going to come out with this if they don't know what they're talking about. And so I would say the odds are slim to none.
I just got a fascinating comment, and I want to shout it out from YouTube. and hopefully it's not scrolling so fast so that, yeah, Carrie Scogan, #AJB, and I just didn't think about this. I didn't think about this. What about the gun? Or excuse me, what about the gunshot? Wouldn't somebody have heard the gunshot? I didn't think of this. So the Carlton Reserve is very rural, but he wasn't that far into the Carlton Reserve. So there's a gunshot at the Carlton Reserve.
What if it was 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, though?
That's true, too.
And, okay, you heard the gunshot. So
it's not all that strange in Florida to hear gunshots in rural counties or in rural areas.
But it's a great question, and it's a great thing to wonder about. Yeah, I mean, somebody would have had to hear it.
Gunshots can be heard from more than a mile away. They can, especially in rural places. But I don't know if anybody in rural Sarasota County hears a gunshot and blinks an eye.
Sure,
it's right. It could be a variety of different things. But in living in rural places, sometimes you do. You'll hear.
And sometimes not so rural places. Sometimes you do, right?
Yeah. I won't tell stories. But let's get to the next comment. And it comes in from Anne Marie Maynard. Hi, Anne Marie. #AJB, #AWalt. Was there a suicide note in the notebook or bag? Yeah, we don't know.
Something like that's not going to be released by the coroner. That's going to be the FBI. That's going to be another investigative unit, I would believe. And then if it's an ongoing investigation, as the family attorney for the Petitos and the Schmitz indicate, they're not giving us any of that because they may still be running down this or that, and somehow someone else was involved. We don't know. So I think we will get a release of information and hopefully have a news conference where there are questions that can be asked. But at this point, we don't know that, and I would not expect to know that from a county coroner. Although the attorney for the Laundries, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some of that information.
I'd be very curious to know if the Laundries know anything about the notebook or about a potential suicide note.
They might.
It's yeah. as far as people who have in the past take their own life, it's not uncommon for there to be a note left behind. And this is why you echoed it. I'll echo it again for the 40th, maybe 50th time. Still can't believe they dropped the detail about the notebook. Yeah. Because now the notebook fuels, is there a suicide note in there?
It fuels a lot of questions.
It does. And more than anything.
Was there a confession of some sort? I just feel like if there was, we'd already know. But again, if it's an ongoing investigation, no matter who's being investigated, that's the type of thing you keep close to your vest if you're an investigator until the investigation is done. You don't want anybody who might be a suspect or a person of interest to know anything more than what they know. And maybe even there's a psychological advantage to putting out there, hey, there's a notebook. Because what if you put it out there as an investigator? If I was writing a movie about it, this is what would happen. If you put it out there as an investigator to sort of pique the interest of someone else who was involved and maybe, shake them up a little bit. Oh, what's in the notebook? What's in the note? What did Brian write? Did Brian write something about what I did, what I might have done? I mean, all that stuff is part of the fascination with that notebook. And like you said, JB, fascinated that they even mentioned it.
It's very out of the ordinary, yes. out of the realm of what is usually done by the FBI. Some other comments before Walt's got to get going. I think we're going to be streaming till about roughly 5 Eastern, Walt. Is that
yeah, that works for me.
That lines up with your timeline? Good.
Yeah.
Lisa Tomlinson, we're giving you a 2-for-1, Lisa. #AJB, #AWalt. So he shot himself, no FBI conference. And then we'll do this in 2 parts for Lisa. So here's Lisa's first one. Again, no FBI press conference at this time. The FBI, Josh Benson and I had a rare moment of disagreeing on our previous stream, just based on our experience, Walt, where he was talking about how he believes that there's going to be an FBI press conference, or there would be an FBI press conference to announce a detail like this, given how large in scale and scope and the audience that this investigation has, as far as internationally and people wanting answers. He believed that there was going to be a press conference of some kind. I thought that it would be sort of surprising if there was a press conference. Given where we are right now, what's your take on it? Press conference, no press conference? Do we?
It's not unusual that there would not be an FBI press conference to announce a
medical examiner's report.
A medical examiner's report. That's not unusual. Yep. I think the FBI will hold a news conference at some point, but if they have something to announce, they will.
Right.
Exactly. If for some reason they determine if the Petito case is ever closed, I think there'll be a news conference, whether they can say that they have that Brian Laundrie did not do it, any of that. If that happens, I think there'd be a news conference. But if things are inconclusive, which they may still be, which it sounds like the Petito and Schmidt's attorney says that things are still inconclusive, it's not a surprise to me they haven't held a news conference because they don't have anything to announce. The FBI doesn't announce a coroner's results from Florida. That just wouldn't happen. Two different agencies, a state agency or a county agency and a federal agency, they're just not going to do that. I would say they didn't have a news conference because they don't have anything to say yet. And according to what we're hearing, they're still working on this case.
Folks, all right, so no FBI press conference. I just got in a note that I want to pass along to our audience. I got to talk with our WFLA team here for just a moment because it's important, and I don't want to speak out of turn or speak on information that. Let me step away. What we're going to do for a moment, we're going to stay just on the shot. I'm just going to mute our microphones. We're going to stay on this shot for a moment. I need to confirm some details here with our team members. Stand by. Back here with you, everybody on stream. Just shot a text over to Steven Bertolino, attorney for the Laundrie family, representing, he of course represented the entire family, Brian Laundrie, Chris Laundrie, Roberta Laundrie. And I asked Mr. Bertolino, did Brian own a firearm? He says yes. Do you, and then I asked him two follow-up questions, and being really transparent with our audience here, do you or your clients know if it's the firearm he used in the suicide, and do you know if it's been recovered? And he says, I don't know to either. So either of those two questions have been...
it's important because he's known a lot along the time that he's been able to share with us.
And let's not forget, because in addition to, he's been a long time legal representative and legal aid, a friend of the family, really. He represents the Laundrie family and has for a considerable amount of time. Just always been there at their attorney, as we understand it, going back to their days in New York. So he knows that Brian owned a firearm, but we don't know if that's the firearm that he used in the suicide, and we don't know if it's been recovered. But
I would think he would know. If anybody knew, I would think he would know. That's just my thought.
I'm curious. I mean, at this point he's being extremely accessible. He's responding to messages So
that's interesting. But again, you ask good questions. We don't know whether that was the firearm used, and we don't know whether they have it. And I'm not sure how much any of it matters, right? Does any of it matter? I think the biggest question might be that does matter. But again, Brian's no longer with us, so does it matter? I think in some ways it matters. When did he do it? Do we have a time frame for when he did it? And if so, were police looking for him, and were they looking for an armed man? That matters.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is the FBI and conducting their search of the Carlton Reserve and Northport Police. Remember, we've showed you endless video, and we'll scroll ahead to some of the video here of the search efforts at the Carlton Reserve. Moving forward here, there's Cassie Laundrie. Yeah, these search efforts. Did they know at the time, excuse me.
They didn't say they knew.
That they were searching for somebody who was potentially armed?
If they knew, wouldn't have they would have said that?
I don't know, but would they?
Warn the public?
Do you?
Or did they know early on that this was a suicide? Well, but that wouldn't have happened because they named him a person of interest. So
they named him a person of interest. They say that they're searching the Carlton Reserve, just trying to put two and two together here.
I would think if they knew he was armed back then, they would have said it.
Lisa Tomlinson, #HeyJB, we want to know about the gun, the notebook, the DNA results from both. So DNA, we know that DNA is now officially a component. We've known, listen, it's the FBI. Their DNA is at the fabric of and the foundation of any investigation effort like this as far as being conducted by the FBI. You don't need a degree of any kind to know that information. But interestingly, back to the document here, and we'll put away Lisa's comment for just a second. The manner of death has been determined to be a suicide, and the confirmation of the identity of the remains are both dental comparison and DNA analysis. So DNA analysis, there is a DNA profile that exists of Brian Laundrie, and they used it to confirm that the remains found at the Carlton Reserve are Brian Laundrie. It wasn't just the dental record. So there's the DNA sort of component. And then Moretta, your comments up next in the queue. #HeyJB, do they have DNA? Yeah, they've got DNA, but do they have, but then how expansive is the DNA evidence that they have in their possession? What kind of DNA evidence do they have as far as Gabby Petito's remains? And is there any connecting sort of DNA evidence between Gabby Petito's remains and Brian Laundrie himself? We don't know. And then Shannon Chenoweth here, #HeyJB, would they be able, this is a good question, would they be able to determine the type of gun used? And I think what Shannon is asking here, based on the forensic examination of the remains, can you determine the kind of firearm that was used?
Maybe. It would.
Maybe,
I would say it would depend. Was the bullet?
Maybe the caliber
was
of
the bullet
bullet
there, or do they just have? It's not to be too gruesome. Do they just have a hole in a skull? And if you have just a hole in the skull, I don't know the answer to this. Can you determine what sort of caliber that is? Maybe because a bigger caliber would do this and a smaller caliber would do that. And then if you do know the caliber, do you backtrack it to this gun that Mr. Bertolino says his client's son had? And then you know it's Brian's gun. But again, it's all sort of a side, sort of only a side of this, because you think about it. At the end of the day, he's dead, and the gun was not used in another crime. We don't believe so. The need for the gun, to me, seems somewhat minimal.
I'm sorry, I'm shooting a text.
That's all right. That's all right. Is it interesting how this happened today? It was almost like they wanted it to happen before the holiday or something, because you wonder how many calls is that coroner's office getting a day, every single day, right? A lot.
Well, yeah, I'm sure just like the Teton County coroner's, phone bill, I'm sure, went down. I'm sure it's going to be the same for the District 12 medical examiner's office. Now that we have this, let's just kind of end out here as we're coming up on 5 o'clock Eastern, and we'll go a couple more extra minutes just because we were silent there for a moment as we were just kind of assessing some information that was coming in. Let's just have a human element here for a second and just speak to just, again, how tragic this is of a situation. Young couple, 20, think of where you were at 23 or 22 years old.
Yeah.
22-year-olds engaged to spend the rest of their lives together, go on a cross-country road trip. Something terrible happens on the road. Clearly something terrible happens on the road. Gabby Petito dies of manual strangulation. She is killed by manual strangulation in Teton County, Wyoming. Brian Laundrie returns home. He's home for several days, goes camping at Fort DeSoto, and then leaves, goes to the Carlton Reserve, and it's believed that soon thereafter, at some point in the near term, then takes a gun and shoots himself. This is bottom line. There's been so much finger pointing going on, and just put your fingers away for 5 seconds, and just this is just a tragic story. It's a tragic story. It's gut-wrenching, and it's decimating to these families, to the Petitos and Schmitz, and to the Laundries. And I know that there's been finger pointing. I know that there's been blaming. I know that police themselves have endured a lot of heat. But what it all boils down to is an extremely tragic set of circumstances, a set of events that occurred between a couple that seemingly was in love publicly on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, but privately was having some difficulties in their relationship. And we don't know if those difficulties had anything to do with Gabby's death definitively at this time, but it just gives you this sinking feeling, because how many people in this country have had instances of domestic abuse and domestic violence, right, Walt? And you just never want it ever to escalate to the point where we have 2 people dead, each member of the couple dead. It just is the worst, and it's a tragedy first and foremost through and through.
It goes, when you look at that video that we've been showing, it really goes to the synthetic nature to some degree of many, if not of social media accounts, because this was a movie. A beautiful movie with 2 young people heading with big dreams and driving through one of the most unique and remote parts of our country.
An adventure. It was an adventure.
An adventure that started out, and there's great happiness, and then it just evolved. So it really makes you, again, it does bring up a lot of questions about a lot of social media. When you look at, people only show the best, absolute best, most people that is, the best side of their lives. And that's what this couple was doing. She wanted to make a living at doing that. And yet what was going on behind the scenes was we suspect was troubling because of how it ended. And then it ends with one young person dead, and then now we find out the other one commits suicide.
For those of you who have stuck around with us on this stream, we just got some new information here in a moment ago, and it comes in the form of Steven Bertolino responding to the text that I just sent while Walt was speaking, and then also via Brian Enton of News Nation. Brian Enton sharing, when Brian Laundrie was reported missing, his parents turned over all their firearms, but one was missing. That's according to Laundrie family attorney Steven Bertolino. And then if you add that with what I just found out, that the firearm that Brian had is no longer with Chris and Roberta presently. So, and I'll confirm this here, Brian Laundrie had a firearm on him. He did have a firearm. He owned one. He owned the firearm.
But we don't know if he had it. Did someone say he had it on him?
They turned over all their firearms. The family turned over all their firearms. One was missing.
We don't know where that gun was, though. Now we can only assume that Brian Laundrie had it. correct?
I'm gonna clarify that with here with Bertolino. Give me a second here, Walt.
So it would be and obviously the question would be what caliber firearm was it? But then again, we may not get that from the medical examiner's office, although that is something they surely could release. I don't see the harm in releasing that, but that is interesting, and that brings us back to the early parts of this investigation, back when, even probably to the part where there was hope that Gabby Petito was still alive. But as we know, Gabby Petito allegedly killed between the 28th and the 30th. Brian Laundrie returned on the 1st. Gabby Petito reported missing on the 11th. Brian Laundrie was apparently already in the woods by the 13th. Is that right? 13th or 14th? 14th. He was already in the woods of the reserve.
I'm sorry. Say that again. I was texting.
By the 13th or 14th, Brian. My point is, we knew about the gun missing early on. I would assume, right? Sometime after Brian had already been to the woods of Carlton Reserve.
Well, you talking about the public? Or talking about the FBI knowing?
Well, I remember that jogged my memory about the confiscation of the gun. So maybe we did know a gun was missing. And somebody pointed out to me the Daily Mail or something had reported something along those lines. That just came to me. Daily Mail later told Daily Mail that one of the family's guns was missing when Laundrie vanished. That's according to somebody on Twitter. So I don't know. But it is unclear where the gun is now. That's, I guess, what's important.
Just one more text, and I'll share. Bertolino just texted me back here, so
these videos that we show you just bring you back to when this case was so different, and it seemed to evolve every single day in the early going. New developments, and this is I guess one of the final developments, really, we would suspect, depending on what happens next with the FBI investigation. Obviously, the homicide case is still open with the FBI. That has not been closed. We have not heard that, and I know they would report it if it had been closed. And it's not closed, still an open case.
I just asked him, the one firearm that went missing, is it the one that Brian owned? Like Brian himself owned that firearm, and Bertolino says that it's not confirmed at this time.
There you go. So just keep in mind, out in the real world, where we don't have rules about what we can say and can't say, we know a gun's missing, but we're not going to make the jump to say that's the gun that Brian had, because we don't know that. And even the attorney does not know that. And again, I would go back to, I'm not sure why any of it matters.
Confirms it was a pistol.
Confirms it was a pistol that he owned.
Brian owned. That's very good, because we're talking about now.
But again, we don't know that's the pistol that was out there. We don't know whether they found the pistol. And I'm going to say it again. I'm not sure why it matters. It mattered at one point when that dog was out looking for Brian, and the officer controlling that canine was out there, because at that point there was danger for the canine, danger to the public if Brian was armed. And again, we never had heard he was armed. There was no suspicion, at least by police. I think they would have said it, that he was armed as this case was developing. How long ago now? 2 months? 2 months.
Yeah.
2 months. Wow.
It's been a lot of coverage, and a lot of folks watching here on WFLA now. We got to get going. Got to be very respectful of Walt's time. I got to get going, folks. I'm going to continue. I'm going to start to share out some of what I've just learned here in the last several minutes on my WFLA JB Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, social media. I'm going to share out on social media some of the things that we have learned in the last several minutes. Got to get going here, folks. Big thanks to 8 on Your Side Senior Investigator Walt Butel. You'll see him on WFLA News Channel 8, of course, sooner rather than later, I would expect. And, of course, all of our latest is on WFLA.com, the
always
WFLA
interesting to see
app.
what the public thinks, and just to talk through the case. I think it's always interesting to do it in this format.
We're ending all streams on Facebook, YouTube, WFLA.com, the WFLA app. To everybody watching, thanks so much. You can follow me and follow both of us. We're going to be tweeting out some new information as we get it, as we have it, as it's available to us. So follow us on our various social media accounts, but this is going to be ending our streaming coverage, at least for the time being. We're always in standby mode for new developments, breaking stories, and the top stories that we want to hear from you, our audience, about using our hashtag-based system on WFLA Now, but we're ending our streams across all platforms for the time being. We'll see you soon, folks, on WFLA Now.